Good morning, students. Welcome to your history video lecture. Today we begin with a new topic, beyond birth, resources and status. And through this topic, we'll try to see whether any social group, if it was based on gender or it was based on varna, if it had access to economic resources, that is wealth or property, so what were the social implications of it? So what was the gendered access to property in ancient India? We'll be looking at this under two headings. The first one, distribution of property between sons of a particular family. And the second topic, wealth that could be retained by women. It is through the Brahmanical texts such as Dharma Sutras, Dharma Shastras, Mahabharat and Manusmriti that we get an idea about it. Okay, and the most important example to showcase about the access to property is from an episode of Mahabharat. So in this particular scene or episode is where the Kauravas had invited the Pandavas for a game of Chaucer. Here it's written dice, it's Chaucer. And this game was supposed to proceed in a way where each party would bet something in each game, and if he wins, he would get whatever was staked by his rival, वो उसका हो जाता. That is how betting works. However, the twist in the game was that this dice or Chaucer game was rigged. And who did this? It was done by the Kauravas, particularly their uncle Shakuni. So if the game is rigged, if the dice is loaded, there is very little chance that Pandavas would have won the game. So what happened? The Pandavas ended up losing everything, okay? Not only their wealth, their property, their kingdom, even their brothers. Pandavas were 5, and who was playing on their behalf? Actually, Yudhishthir was playing. The eldest son was playing the game on the brothers' behalf. So he ended up losing himself as well as his brothers. मतलब उनका freedom तक he managed to lose it. And after losing himself, after losing everything, he staked the common wife of Pandavas, that is Draupadi, and ended up losing her too. Now, in your book, in source 11, so Draupadi doesn't accept this defeat without questioning. Okay, so two very important questions are posed by her, which expresses her anguish. So it is given in source 11. Kindly go through it. So this entire episode in Mahabharat, it talks about the issues of ownership. Who owned what? So when we look at Manusmriti, we get a clearer picture of the patrilineal inheritance that was carried out. Patrilineal inheritance क्या है? If you remember clearly, whatever the inheritance is, that is wealth or property or name, fame, throne, whatever, being passed from grandfather to father to son. That is the male line of succession. So it is because of these patrilineal succession, whatever was the paternal state, मतलब जो भी बाप दादा का जो जागीर जिसको कहते हैं जो था, that was supposed to be divided equally amongst all the sons. So notice the word sons. There are no daughters mentioned here. So all the property was supposed to go after the death of their parents to the sons, with a special share to the eldest son. In fact, the special share of eldest son was usually seen in the ruling families, okay, where the throne would pass down to the eldest son. We also call this the rule of primogeniture. And if you remember your 11th standard textual material correctly, we had done something called heir and spare while talking about the Renaissance in Europe. So same logic can be applied here. There was a special share given to the eldest son, and the leftover property was equally divided among other sons. And women or daughters could not claim these resources as a matter of right. They could only get those things which was given to them as a gift. Now we come to the next part, the wealth that could be retained by women. So the daughters of women were allowed to retain only those gifts which they got or received on the occasion of their marriage as stri dhan. Word ko hi bifurcate karo, sandhi viched karo, and you get women's wealth. So what was this? It was generally in the form of jewelry or household objects, utensils, or cash if the father preferred to do this, preferred to give it to her. So this Stridhan belonged to the woman and she could pass it down to her children. Ideally speaking, her husband was not supposed to have any claim on it, okay? But again, Manusmriti being very much steeped in patriarchal notion and very rigid, it said that the woman should not hoard her own valuables without even the permission of her husband. और ऐसा भी देखा जाता था, if there were times of difficulties, these whatever स्त्री धन was there in the form of jewelry or whatever, it could be pawned by the husband. Now what were some of these exceptions to this rule? Okay, the most famous example or the most famous woman we have done till now is that of the story of Prabhavati Gupta. She was the queen, Vakataka queen, who ruled on the behalf of her sons. So she had access to property which she granted in the form of land grants. So the evidence in certain texts as well as through the inscriptions or these land grants, there have been suggestions made by historians that some upper class women in ancient India might have had access to resources, okay? But remember, access does not imply they had a claim on these resources. Access था क्योंकि उनको दिया गया था, not as a matter of right, but mostly it were the men that held all the money. और जिसके पास money power होता है, obviously they play a much more influential role in society. So the Brahmanical texts mention other criteria for regulating access to wealth. And what is this criteria? It was the Varna system. So within the Varna system, if the ideal occupation was followed properly, it would lead to ensure that those at the top would remain better off. For example, the Brahmins who were well versed with Vedas and performed all these sacrificial rituals, they would get dakshina, okay? And so this dakshina, if given by a king or a prosperous person, would make them well off. Now the Brahmins would also have gotten some land grants. If you remember the Agrahara land grants given during the Gupta era. Next we have the Kshatriyas. So some of these Kshatriya rose to become kingly or elite classes. So if he was a king, automatically he had the claim to all the resources or property within his kingdom. So much riches that we cannot even imagine if the kingdom was prosperous enough. Then when we speak about the Vaishyas, remember it is this community which was engaged in craft production, agriculturalists, they were the I'm sorry, not the labor, they were the traders or merchants. So if they practiced their profession and were able to make enough profit, even they would be well off. It was finally the Shudras who had no claim to property as such, but they were only required to serve the other three higher varnas. So, if all this was followed by the book or according to the rule, then those at the top benefited the maximum. Okay, now some textual inscriptions or traditions does support this, but this is not generally true for all cases. Matlab, if you think about it, when we were doing exceptions, think how the Maurya dynasty, okay, which was not supposed to be Kshatriya in origin, it claimed power. So obviously it had access to so much wealth and property throughout India. Then there are depictions of poor Brahman. You might have been familiar with stories of such as Krishna Sudama ka story. So Sudama was a poor Brahman. You might be aware of the story of Dronacharya. So Google these stories if you don't know. So what we are trying to say is that to some extent, if the Brahmanical tradition was followed, then the higher varnas had more access to property or wealth.